right, are we ready? All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to TBD, your Colorado Springs real estate podcast. I'm Rob Thompson, associate broker with the agency here in Colorado Springs, and I'm joined once again by my colleagues.
Laurie, Ristig, also a realtor here at the agency.
And Mike Mattice, loan officer for Total Lighting Concepts.
Welcome back, everybody. Today's topic is the cost of home ownership. Is that accurately sum up what we're going to...
Sure.
Okay. So the actual cost of, the actual cost of home ownership, although we don't have actual figures necessarily, just some things to consider. Before we get to that, though, we have some market stats. What do we got, Laurie?
So days on market was the one that shocked me the most. So I'm looking at March till today. Today's the 21st that we're recording this on. January, the average days on market was 13. February, it went down to 9. And now in March, we're down to 5 days on the market. So it gets listed in the MLS as active, and within 5 days, that house is under contract. And that's the average for everything across the board. So that includes like $1 million homes.
I am flabbergasted. I just can't see this continuing. But I say that every week, and then
Say that,
yeah. Eventually, I'm gonna be right.
Well, and so we were discussing what is behind that and basically, is it because there are fewer homes on the market being listed this year, or is it because we're being flooded by buyers? So we kind of ran some numbers.
We did, and the data, I guess it could be interpreted a couple different ways.
Sure, depending on also what price point you're looking at.
Right. There has been, so let me pull it up here. If we look at the total number of sales over the last 5 years, from 2013 through 2017, the volume of sales reads like this. In 2013, it was 12,142. 14 was 12,710. 2015 was 15,180. So it jumped approximately 2,400. Then 16 was 17,506. So it jumped another 2,400. And then 17 was 18,716. So another 1,200 on top of that. So bottom line is there were 6,006 more sales in 2017 than there were in 2014. So corresponding to the spike that we've seen in values.
Right.
Sure.
And that probably goes to some of what we've talked about
Which
in the past.
which leads us.
Denver
Go ahead.
moving down.
Yeah, there's more buyers here. There are more buyers here buying and putting bids on the same homes, basically, and that's why they're disappearing so fast.
That makes sense. And we've always, I guess we've characterized it as there's less inventory, but it's actually been there's more sellers.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a egg chicken argument too. So there's more buyers buying the homes, meaning there's less inventory.
Sure.
But I guess it is an important distinction in that it isn't a lack of inventory driving the change. It's more sales.
It's people moving.
I think it's a balance of both, to be honest with you. If we had more listings, then prices would stay stable to keep up with the demand that's coming in, the new demand.
Agreed. However, I think we've talked in the past too that there's a lot of variables to that listing. The cost of labor has gone up. Well, probably as a function of all this as well. The cost of land has gone up. The city has expanded. Where are you going to put these homes? Out in Peyton, but then there's no bus line out there. So a lot of there's no bus line I'm aware of out there. Bottom line is, more sales has put us in this position where there's less inventory.
So then I was asking also, rent prices have just skyrocketed, and so we're like, okay, is this because more renters are looking to buy now because they want to get a better deal, which led us to then break it down by 250 and below the inventory.
And so if we look at the 250 and below inventory, then
how many are on the market today?
Oh, good question. I'll have to run that number.
He's pulling it up on his computer.
Yeah. So, but if we look at the total number of sales, that's actually been more consistent. So, if in the same 5-year span, there was a spike. In 2013, it was 7,961. So 7,961 homes sold, 250 or below. In 2013, 17 was 8,159. So there's only a 200 differential, but it spiked in 2015 or 2016 with 9,347. The bottom line is, if you, it's hard to visualize, but if you could visualize this trend, you would see that there was a big run up to 2016, and then there was a 1,200 home drop. But it wasn't a drop necessarily. It's
Right.
that and Mike pointed out a little bit ago that the average price rose,
Yes.
so that
Right.
there was by definition
Yeah.
less sales
It's
below
the
250.
same houses. They're just selling for more money.
Right? So it does give the impression that there's less inventory, but it's the inventory is actually higher priced.
Yeah, it's just
And
the
so-
prices are going up. So
Right.
there's, we were just talking, I have 2 buyers that I'm helping right now that are in the 180 range, and it's very difficult. One of them
Well-
wants a yard because he's got a dog, and it's like,
I-
even with a condo, it's really difficult to find that.
Well, because then with the condo you might have HOA fees,
Sure.
and so that
Yep.
I don't think condos are a bargain. It's just my opinion.
So
It depends.
I guess in summation, we're saying that the volume of sales has actually been increasing, which gives which means there's less inventory available for the buyers looking. Also has the effect of driving up the rental prices, and
Yes.
then there's another effect here too. As every time a home is bought and sold, then you just drove up the rental price of that property, because if it rented for $1,000, if it's sold for $250, you can't rent that house
No.
For
for
$1,000.
$1,000 to cover the mortgage. So there's a lot of variables at play. What are we saying? We're saying that the volume of sales has increased, right?
But it's not keeping up with the
It's not keeping up
buyer,
with
the
overall
volume of
demand.
buyers that
Right.
are coming in, and the demand for buying a home here.
So at some point, though, I maintain, despite the market data, at some point the market
Numbers
characters.
don't lie, Rob.
No, they don't. But what I've been saying is it's not sustainable, and because also the market characterization. This market until 3 years ago was built on a price point and a demographic, and so the wages here haven't kept up with our prices,
Right.
and so at some point we're going to hit equilibrium and then possibly correct. That's what I think.
We always correct, but it
Yeah.
always comes back and is always stronger.
Historically,
Always been that.
historically that's the case.
Yeah.
But how many times can you go through this? And I'm not trying to be like all apocalypse here, but
What?
Pragmatic is pragmatic, not apocalypse. How many times can we go through this boom bust cycle before there is a sustained? I don't know. For example,
it's been going on since World War II. This has happened.
right. Yes, it has, and actually, so let's walk this path. Okay, there's this
Oh,
thing
gosh.
called
Here we go.
Yeah, here we go.
Down the rabbit hole.
Down the
Let's
rabbit
do
hole. So the post World War II economy was built on a certain set of circumstances. Russia lost 20 million men. Our losses will dire. We're not that substantial. So these men came back. We also had women empowered in that economy
Right.
in the absence of men. So these men and women came back after the war, and they built the post World War II economy. I think what's happening geopolitically right now is that World War II model is breaking down.
I would not disagree entirely.
So it's not sustainable. What got us there won't keep us there, and the world is changing. We can't say to the rest of the world, we're going to maintain American dominance at all costs. As China rises, as Russia rises, as India rises, our piece of the pie necessarily gets a little smaller. So anyway, that's
the one thing that we do in America, I think, better than most is innovate, though.
yeah.
And I think that's our strongest suit that we have.
And I'm not even saying this is a bad thing. I'm just saying
Right.
that we can't say these house prices, for example, to bring it back to the micro in our market, are going to continue to do this as the structure around us changes. I'm trying to think of a better example, but I have a Toyota Tacoma and I have a Chevy Volt. I drive them much differently, but kind of
Sure.
when I sit in the Volt and I'm driving the Volt on the freeway and the truck, I keep up with traffic. But in the Volt, there's a little meter, and
Tells
the little
you, yep.
when you're driving
How
efficiently.
energy efficient
Yeah,
you're driving.
and so I
yep.
find myself in the Volt without even thinking about it. I'm driving in the far right lane, 65 miles an hour, because that's the exact, that's where my little
I
meter.
do,
And
I do
I'm
that
like,
when I drive.
You're
a-
being trained.
and people are, but the structure,
Right.
I sit in the structure and it changes. So I think our structure is changing, and so it's going to. I think they're incompatible. You can't say house prices are going to continue to rise while wages are stagnant.
Sure.
and
Wages
then-
are a definite
and
problem.
then the structure is changing. Russia and China are talking about doing a trade agreement excluding us. Yeah, they're talking. There's even talk about moving away from the petrodollar.
Yeah, and that would hurt us.
And so that would
really hurt us.
So, in a vacuum, yeah, sure, house prices would continue to rise, but there's a lot of things changing.
There's
the structure.
A potential outside influence that could change the structure of not just our market, but of all markets.
The global marketplace, right? So I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's just a phenomenon. It's neither good nor bad. It's happening. And at some point, I think it's going to reflect in the market prices. But I acknowledge that I've been saying that for 6 months.
6 months?
6 months at least.
6 months, that's all?
Well, since we started the podcast.
I've known you longer than that, Rob.
The market trend is not tracking my thoughts. But it's such an interesting discussion of status quo and systemic stressors and complexity economics.
Buyers and sellers, if you want someone who's not going to tell you what you want to hear and who is going to give you the worst case scenario, Rob Thompson is your man. He will tell it exactly how it is and might even tell you, please don't buy something right now. From me.
Yeah,
I mean, it's true.
Yeah,
it's true.
I stand by that. Now,
integrity.
Thank you.
Right
The other side of that is if you're even with the context of the conversation we're having, even if I found a good purchase, I would still buy it.
Sure.
Because what I've been saying is make the best decision you can on a sustainable basis. Don't project increased growth. Take a very fiscally conservative route here.
Yeah, I think that you're banking on an increase, and that would be
that's where I'm
in error.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm not saying you sell everything. I own a couple rental properties. And we're also
saying it's not going to happen. It might happen. It might increase. Right. That'd be great.
Yeah, but don't bank on it.
Don't
right?
bank on it.
Because even just the variable of interest rates, that puts downward pressure on pricing.
Oh, I heard the Fed was raising interest rates today.
Yeah. Well, they're supposed to raise it 3 times this year, a little more.
That made me sound so dire. But what I'm just saying is make sound, sustainable decisions based on don't project wage growth. Don't bank on wage growth. Don't bank on continued appreciation of pricing.
So speaking of sustainability
good segue.
and making good decisions, the cost of home ownership. So everyone just thinks, oh, it's going to be my mortgage, my taxes, and my insurance. Good to go. But you need to think about how much are your utilities going to cost every month. If you're going to buy a house in Old North End that's 100 years old and has no insulation,
energy efficiency.
Yeah, this is going to be different than a new build. Maintenance and repairs, buying resale versus new, and HOA fees. You have to keep into account HOA fees. And sometimes I've seen some places where HOA fees were very low for what they gave you, and other places where they were ridiculously high for what you get in return. So yeah, let's blast into that.
Okay. I would as we start that segment, I would share a piece of advice.
Sure.
Probably the best thing I got from the whole Rich Dad Poor Dad series was the following. He said, a home is not an asset unless it produces revenue. It's a liability.
Sure.
Your home is not an asset.
I've heard that.
And that helped inform me. Unfortunately, it was after I bought my house in 2008 or 2007. But afterwards, and I read that, it was like an epiphany, right? When you're going to buy a house, it's not an asset until you sell it and make money, or until you make it a rental and it cash flows. So that helps inform me as I walk through houses. It puts me in a more investment mindset. Yeah. Along that same lines, what Laurie is going to elaborate on here are very necessary considerations in the home purchase process.
Sure. So there's a lot of things you need to take into account when you're buying a house, and some of these you might think of, and some of them might just go right over your head. And I'm just going to blast off with a whole bunch of ones that I just thought of on the fly just a minute ago. So you're going to have to replace filters on things. You're going to need to clean your gutters, repaint your exterior every few years. I do mine every other year because I have a 1979 house. It needs new siding. Repair any cracks in the siding, plumbing leaks, seal the doors and windows, winterize your sprinklers, replace your carpets every few years, or most people like to do it when they first move in. It's like someone's old gross carpet. Right. Regrout bathroom tile, pest control. I had to replace my roof a year after I moved in. Luckily, insurance covered it. Hooray. Furnace. I got a new furnace this year.
What about the deductible?
Yeah, that's true. I paid extra because I wanted
Class 4.
the super strong ones that are hail resistant.
Class 4.
Yes, and it made my insurance go down. So, hey. Hot water heater, fixing the deck. We had to replace our deck. So, I mean, can you think of anything else just off the top of your head?
You mentioned furnace, water heater.
Furnace, water heater.
Yep.
AC if you have it.
AC coil, yep. Well, I mean, those are the major sewer lines.
Sewer lines,
Yep.
yep.
Yeah.
Yep, I've had to have my sewer line snaked out before when it clogged up.
Yeah, that's a pretty common thing, especially if there are trees.
Yep.
But even if they're not.
Yeah, our house, we don't have, so our sewer line goes from our house underneath our driveway, real smart. And there's no trees by it, but there used to be. Like,
Okay,
if
gotcha.
you, like, maybe a year before we moved in, they chopped down this tree that was in our front yard, and so there are still roots on our sewer line, even though there's no tree there anymore.
Did they take the stump out as well?
I took the stump
Okay.
out after we moved in.
Gotcha,
I was
okay.
like, nope.
Even on there's some articles floating on Facebook here locally. New builds. Even on a new build, it's a good idea to spend $125 to shoot the sewer line.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was a story running around where two of them actually, where contractor A was hired to build the house and run the pipes. Contractor B was hired to run the pipe to the main sewer line, and then contractor C was hired to backfill. In nobody's scope of work did anything say connect the house to the pipe, and so
Oh.
and so it wasn't connected, and it was draining straight into the dirt. So 2 weeks after closing, and this was not my client, not my property, but the 2 weeks after closing, the word is sewer line started back up into the basement, and they shot it and figured out that it was never connected.
Oh my gosh.
Another instance.
So who pays that?
Well, good question. The story is
I'm like,
all three contractors are saying not in our scope of work, right? And then the builder said essentially sue me, and so the whole the another one is that a new build, when they backfilled, they put too much pressure on the dirt and snapped the sewer line. So and so again, you just can't know those things unless you shoot the line. So
I think the first example of not in our scope of work, it's just really, I mean, as someone who takes pride in what I do, if I'm standing there, I'm going to make sure it's connected. But that's just me.
I don't disagree. What else you got, Laurie?
So now we're talking buying a resale home versus buying a new home. And some people are like, I want a new home because I don't want to do maintenance. I don't want to have to replace the furnace in the next few years. I want everything to be new and fresh and lovely. And that's great. If that's what you want, your maintenance costs just drop significantly for the immediate future, provided everything was done right. He's pointing at me. He's
sewer
making
lines
this face
attached.
like, wait. So I recently took a class. This is, I think, every single episode of this, I say I recently took a class because guess what? I like taking classes. I want to know my job. I want to know the ins and outs. And if you hire me, I'm going to know everything because I go to lots of classes and talk to lots of people.
Napoleon Hill said that the application of knowledge is power.
Oh my
So
gosh.
Laurie
it's
is
important.
a very powerful person.
Yay, thanks. All right, so this guy Todd Gamboa, he works for the governor in the Colorado Energy Office. He's been doing this for 20 years. And I mean, a lot of this I kind of knew already, but he really gave me like the 411. He helps write the Colorado State Code, building codes, and so he had a lot of insider information. So with new builds, he basically put it like this. He pointed to his computer and said, would you pay full price for this computer I have that's a couple months old? Most people are like, sure, sweet. If I had a 10-year-old Dell sitting here, would you pay full price for it? And the answer was, of course not. And he's saying, well, a lot of new builders, they, instead of putting the new awesome furnace and the new energy efficient everything, they're putting stuff in that was new and great 10 years ago because they can get a big discount on it, put it into this new house, and while it works, sure, it's not energy efficient. It is not going to save you money on your utilities. And so he said the best way, and also, insulating the home, basically the quality of the home overall in terms of energy efficiency. So he said the best way to find out whether they're using the new, good, great stuff is to just sit down with a builder and say, what is your HERS rating? And HERS stands for Home Energy Rating System. What is your score on this model of home? So in 2006, the average home that's built to code, and it's whether it was great, bad, good, whatever, the average home, if this home is the average 2006 home, the HERS rating score is 100. And the better the score on the home, it's lower. So the lower the score, the better the score. So you can go to this builder and say, what's your HERS score? And new builds, they should know on each model what their HERS score is. And if they don't know it off the top of their heads, they should be able to look it up.
Two practical things there.
Sure.
Don't expect the builders to negotiate. Well, first, call Laurie if you're looking for a new build, and call Mike for the financing on the same, because they're very knowledgeable
Sure.
clearly. Second, don't expect the builder to negotiate much in this market.
Sure. They may not negotiate, but you can do some shopping around.
Yeah, there you go. And then you expect, though, if you want to get those upgrades, you're going to pay for them directly.
Exactly.
And
not all builders and not all neighborhoods are created equal, and some builders want to have the most energy efficient, amazing, great homes that they can possibly build, and quality is very important to them. And some builders just want to knock out a bunch of cookie cutter houses, sell them real quick, and make a buck and be done. And they're not necessarily trying to make a bad home; they're just trying to get the best deal they can and make the most money when they sell it to you, which is business. I
was in a house where there was a dichotomy, or it was a weird thing, but this is what it ended up being. The inspector said that the furnace was I want to say it was like 7 years old, but the house was 4, and it didn't square. I'm like, well, that's not possible, because it's a 4-year-old house, right? And he's like, no, it is possible. I'm like, and he's like, they had it on a shelf and they put it in when they built the house. I'm like, okay. Yeah.
Oh, so they purchased them all at once.
Yeah, bulk order 7 years prior.
Yep.
Or at some point in time,
I'm sure it works just fine.
Yeah. And it did. It just, in this case, yeah.
But if you want the thing that's going to be the most energy efficient, it's going to save you the most money, you're going to want to get something newer and something that's Energy Star rated really high. And you might pay an extra few bucks for getting those on a new build. But, I mean, if it's going to save you money over the long run, is it worth it?
Depends on how long it takes to recoup.
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
How long do you
Well,
plan
it
on
takes.
owning the house?
It's twofold. It's how long does it take to recoup? Let's say you spend an extra $10,000 total on your new build for all the energy efficient things, and your utility bill was going to be $300, and now instead it's $200 a month. So that drops down your payment, your total payment of your mortgage and your utilities. It drops it down $100 a month.
8 years to recoup.
8 years was what it was. It would take 8 years to pay it back. But are you taking also into account there's
resale value, things
there's all kinds of stuff that jumps into it. So
is there any tax credits?
Sure.
Those all expired.
Yep. Oh gosh. Okay, so there were in the class they basically went over a few different things. Number one was the building envelope, and that's basically how weather tight is this house? How tightly is it built? The fenestrations, the windows, the doors, the skylight performance. How's the attic insulation? He said that 30 to 40% of your home's energy efficiency escapes through the attic.
Yeah.
For poor attic insulation. Crawl spaces were not required to be insulated until 2006. So if you have an older home, crawl space, man. Next, he went through HVAC, so heating, ventilation, air conditioning. Most new builds are putting, if they're a good new build, will put 95 or more efficiency furnaces in their new builds, and they'll be centrally located. You can get up to 98.5% efficient furnaces. I actually just replaced our furnace. We ended up going with a 95 because I live in a house that was built in 1979, and we had our whole system redone. It was expensive.
What did you spend? I'm just curious.
It was about $5,000.
Okay.
We just did the same.
But we're gonna recoup that. We've done a lot. We were just talking since we moved in about 7 years ago. Every year we do a little something more to make our home a little more energy efficient, because it was leaky like crazy when we moved in.
There's also a component to, as practical as I try to be in all this as well.
Uh-huh.
if it's your forever home, you want to enjoy it and live in it.
Yeah.
There might be knowing that I have a new furnace that's going to last probably
Peace
Yep.
of mind.
peace of mind.
Yeah.
We
It's not
also
going to conk out when it's -2
No.
in February.
right. Whereas the old one, once every 3 weeks or so, it would fail the fire,
Well,
and so I'm like, well, okay,
ours,
this
it
can't-
was crazy. We didn't know ours was even broken. It was working, but it was overheating, so it would turn on, heat up, start blowing hot air into the house, overheat, turn off. And as soon as it cooled down enough that it wasn't, it would turn back on. So it was just
Fire
kicking
back up.
on, off, on, off, on, off all day long. And it was heating our house up, but it was like killing the motor on it. And we, for Christmas, my husband, what big present do you want? And I was like, I want a Nest thermostat. He's
Nice.
like, you're ridiculous. You don't want jewelry? You don't want, no, I want a thermostat. I'm a realtor. I want
You're
a
very
thermostat.
romantic. I like that.
So I got a Nest thermostat, and it sent alerts to my phone that was like, something's up with your furnace. You might want to have it checked out. It's doing this
It knew
thing.
that.
And it literally showed me a graph of like what it was doing. And so we called the furnace guy out, and they're like, oh yeah, this is overheating. This is, it'll work if you want to limp it along, but I don't recommend it. You don't want like a house fire or
So
something.
at some point it's going to catch fire.
Yeah. So we ended up replacing it,
It's like, yeah.
and it's so fancy now.
Right
So
on.
who did you use? Might as well give them a plug.
yeah.
Oh gosh, I don't remember the name.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Sorry guys. I don't remember your name. Home something. Anyway, yeah. Hot water heater. That's another thing. My husband and I are thinking about replacing in our good old 1979. I love our house, by the way, but
It's a nice house.
old house. So I talked to this guy about replacing with getting a tankless water heater.
We have one.
Those are fancy, right?
They
They're
are.
pretty cool. And he actually told us not to do it in our old house. And he said, if
didn't
the
wanna hear that. I
ultimate
don't-
goal...
blah,
No,
blah,
no, this
no,
is
no.
what he said. He said, if your ultimate goal is to save the earth and to use less water, and money is no object, go crazy. But retrofitting an old house with a tankless hot water heater, you're going to need a 1-inch gas pipe. And most of these old houses don't have a 1-inch gas pipe.
Oh,
So
wow.
you're going to have to replace the entire gas line
That's not
going
cheap.
from... Yes, it's expensive.
Yeah.
He said it's really expensive to replace an old, atmospheric vented hot water heater with a tankless. And
Yes,
if you're buying a
it
new
is.
build, throw it in there. Do it on a
Yeah.
new build. Absolutely
Yeah.
do it on a new build because you're getting a new.
So
Line
they were
anyway.
doing this remodel, and we weren't planning to replace the furnace or the water heater.
Yeah.
So they took down this wall, and then they're like, "Oh, hey, look, the venting or the chase runs through the wall." Well, darn! So we had to reroute the chase, right?
Sure.
And then it happened to be where we were going to put the stove and the hood vent.
Uh-huh.
They were like, well, it kept compounding, and then. And so then they're like, well, your furnace is dying anyway. You've already said that. So if we put in this new furnace, then we can vent because you
Yeah,
can't
because they
vent the
vent
old
it
furnace,
differently.
right?
Yeah.
And so then it turned out to be that we needed this kit, to retrofit the water heater as well. And I'm
Mhm.
like, just go ahead and replace the water heater because it's 14 years old or so.
Sure.
And then they were like, well, then the gas pipe.
The
and
gas
then I'm
line,
like,
he
oh
said,
my
was
gosh.
so
And I'm like,
expensive to replace.
oh yeah, I don't. In the end, I was just. I was like, so
I'm so far into
yeah,
the weeds,
yeah.
might as well keep
yeah.
going.
Well, in the end, I had to say, okay, so let's kill the backsplash. We're not going to do the backsplash. We're not because we also and
what are
just
we gonna shuffle around?
exactly. We had to just say, okay, we're just going to have to stop these things and apply that cost here. And
Yep. Yeah, so
was-
he said a power vented hot water heater works great. And it will save over the old atmospheric vented hot water heaters, and you're less likely to have a leak into your house. Like they're tight.
Yeah.
And they're good. You get an Energy Star rated hot water heater that's power vented. It's not as efficient as the tankless, but it's pretty close. And he's like, at the end of the day, with how much you're going to pay to put that hot water heater in versus how much you're actually going to save on water, he's like, even if you live there for a long time, it's just not worth it. But if your ultimate goal is I want to save the planet, and this is a drought and I want to use less water, and you've got the bucks to throw one in and it makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside, go crazy.
Well, I did have that in funds. No.
Not anymore.
Cost overrun. And So then at the end of everything, we go we had got an electric car, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I go to plug this car in, and the system, our electrical system for the house, won't support the car.
It. Oh, gosh.
And I was like, oh my god! And so we had an electrician come out, through and they're like, yeah, you're gonna have to replace the electrical panel, and also, oh, by the way, you have to run a new line because your line doesn't support that.
Sure.
And I was
like going into the garage,
yep,
basically.
Yeah. So all all said and done, we had to upgrade the electrical to the house as well. And so here, funny story at the end. I went to plug the car in when it was supposedly all done, and it still wouldn't charge.
Oh,
and
no.
the contractor happened to text me that same day. He's like, hey, when can I get the final payment? I'm like,
when it works.
I was like, when it works.
My car.
So I'm standing out the car, and the whole goal of this last part of the upgrade was to plug this car in, and it's still not charging. And I was like, professionally angry, but I wasn't like raging. I was just like, no, I'm not paying until it's done. It's still not done. He's like, no, it's all done. I'm like, man, I'm looking at the car. It is not charging, right? And so he's like, I'm on my way because it's all. And so I'm looking at my system, looking at the car, and from being an electronics guy in the Air Force, right? I'm like, I'm gonna troubleshoot this system, figure this out, right? And so we had a heavy duty extension cord that the system said, that the car said you could use, right? Anyway, I took the extension cord out, moved the car closer to the garage so I could plug it directly in, right? Bing, green light. I'm like, it was the extension cord. So
he came out and he's like, I told you
there,
I did it right.
Well, he gets there and he's like, what's going on? I'm like, here's your check. He's like, no, you got to make sure it works. I'm like, it's fine. It's fine.
My bad.
Here's your check.
My bad.
Yeah. Anyway. Good times. Okay. Sorry. What you got?
So next, continuing with water plumbing. Anything that has a water sense logo, it'll say the word water sense on it. Any kind of fixture you want to get, faucets, toilets, shower heads, anything like that, is thumbs up, he said. If it's got that on it, it's going to be the new hotness, and it's going to be very water efficient. And as for dishwashers, clothes washers, things like that, you want to get that Energy Star thing on there, and it's good to go. And then he talked about renewables, like solar, putting solar panels. And going back to how much you're going to get out of it, he said if you have the bucks to put solar on your 1979 house, and it is not insulated, and you are not using energy efficient appliances in your house, your stove, your fridge, dishwasher, things like that, and your furnace, you're going to save more money if you just replace those. The amount of money you're going to save using energy efficiency and having a good building envelope on your home is going to be way more than you're going to save with solar. And the other thing with solar is it's really expensive. You have the choice to either purchase it or do a lease that is for a certain amount of time, and it's like when you lease a phone, and it's for a certain amount of time, and then when you're done your payments, it's yours. And those usually last a long time. And if you're going to move and you're selling your house, well, now the buyer has to eat the cost of the lease, or you do, of finishing out that lease. So he was like, unless your house is HERS rated 60 or lower, put the money into your home instead of into the solar panels. And you'll want to, if you're occupying long term is another thing. He says they're just expensive, and when you go to sell your house, you're not going to recoup what you paid for them. You just won't. You'll get some back, but you're not going to get everything back from your solar panel installation. So
the person who benefits is the person who buys the house.
So if you're going to live there for a while and your home is already HERS rated, or you're buying a new build that's HERS rated, and you want to throw solar on, he's like, do it. It's great. It's amazing. And my husband actually used to work in a solar panel factory in Albuquerque. But solar, the technology, like every year, it's so good. It's mostly not just the solar cells, but the battery, the actually saving the energy that the solar panels are.
Technology is getting better and better.
Technology is just leaps and bounds ahead. Every single year, it gets better and better and better.
I was just having a conversation with someone about this morning about I have that Volt, the electric car, and he was asking me how long the batteries are projected to last. I said, well, 5 to 7 years is what they're saying, but they're so new that we don't know yet, right? And I was kind of lamenting, not the fact that I bought it, but just like the unknown, right? And he's like, well, how much does your truck cost in gas? And it turns out he's a former car salesman.
Sure.
And I was like, well, it's $600 a month in gas being a realtor, right?
Oof.
Well, being an agent driving that Tacoma around, right? And he did the quick math, and he's like, well, that's $30-something thousand over the span of that same time. How much did the volt cost? I was like, well, $30-something thousand. He's like, so you broke even. Okay. Good call. Yeah. So
Run the numbers.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
okay.
basically the moral of this whole thing is if you want to buy new, it's kind of worth it, especially if you're going to live there for a few years, to throw the extra bucks in. If it's an upgrade, to throw the extra money in. But if it's not, just to shop around and look for places that already have these upgrades in them.
From a sheer practical standpoint, I agree with everything you just said. I would say when look at the market and how much time you have here. So if you are coming into this market and this can be your forever home, or you're projecting 10 years in the home, I would agree. If you're military, you're PCSing here, and you know that you're only going to be here for 4 years. Then the
upgrades you're not going to recoup your costs.
No, you're not, just by definition not, unless you think that the market's going to continue to grow by 10-12% annually, which I think by definition it can't. But yeah,
sure.
Yeah. So.
Or if you just like those warm fuzzies of having
and
makes you feel awesome to live in a energy efficient home and it's worth it to you, then go nuts.
Or even if you're going to come here, and I've had this happen a couple times. People come here, they spend those dollars to do those things. And then they know they're going to leave, but they're coming back. In 5 or 10 years, they're coming back.
They're rent it and then
they'll rent it and come back, and it's going to be there for a forever home then.
Yep.
So that's it. Yeah.
Plus, if you're renting it, that's a big bonus. If utilities are low, you can say this much rent, utilities included, and you're like.
that would be a significant. Yeah, that would be significant. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Mike, you mentioned something before the podcast started about financing of some of these upgrades possible.
So if you're buying an existing home and you want to come in and do some of these upgrades, what we do offer is what's called an FHA 203K rehab loan. And all the things that Laurie's been mentioning are actually covered under that. My company, we do the streamline, we don't do the full. So you can go up to $35,000 as far as what you want to do in spending on rehab in the home.
Okay.
So give me a call if you're interested.
I have a question.
Sure.
What if you are currently in your home and you want to upgrade? Would you recommend like refinancing and taking cash out and
if
doing
you don't have,
way, or doing a 203K?
It depends on your it depends on your circumstances.
Okay.
The 203K is an FHA loan, and it comes with the mortgage insurance, which, as we all know, is not something that benefits the borrower. It benefits FHA.
Sure.
So a HELOC, in some cases, may be worthwhile looking at as well.
That's home equity line of credit.
Correct.
All right. Cool. Okay, Mike. Along with financing, what do you think about interest rates?
Interest rates. Well, let's get the magic 8-ball, give it a shake, and let's see what it says. Will interest rates continue to rise? Come on. You may rely on it. Really negative. Has been for a couple months.
I mean,
Interest rate. The 8-ball says interest rates are
this
going.
8-ball's kind of wise.
It is.
It's been
Well,
really dispensing some wisdom.
Well, yeah, going back
Probably
to
more accurate than the professionals who get paid tons of money to say the same thing.
well, yeah, I'm reading Adaptive Markets still by Andrew Lowe, and yeah, that would be a fair. I think he would agree. Yeah, and going back to what we said in the beginning about post World War II economy, that interest rates almost have to rise, but we'll see.
Well, they've been held down
Yeah.
since 2008, really since the collapse. The Fed has been at zero forever, and they just started raising it last year, and this year they're projected to raise it at least 3 times. So rates are going up.
The Fed Futures Index, which is essentially it tracks the bets against the interest rates or bets on the interest rates, it shows the same thing. It shows that by October we'll see more, at least, well, twice again that you just said. There's 2 ticks in there that show, I think around June, and then October is what the market is betting on. It's kind of interesting. Okay, so our last segment, website or book recommendation. Anybody got anything?
I have a product recommendation.
Go ahead. What do you got?
Okay, I have 3 bathrooms in my house. We changed one of the toilets out into a water sense because I love all things energy and water efficient, because I do get to feel good. But we didn't do all 3. So the other 2, we did this thing So in the olden days, people used to put a brick in their toilet tank, in the upper tank, so that it would fill up the space, so you wouldn't use as much water with each flush, which is a really good thing too. We're in Colorado, and this is clearly a drought going on right now. So, but if you put a brick in your toilet tank, the minerals from it will break down, like the rubber seals in your toilet, and it will start leaking. So you don't want to put a brick in your toilet tank. Do not. So there's this company that makes this product called, and it's disgusting and awesome, potty humor time, Drop a Brick. And it is a rubber brick that says Droppa on it. And you just fill it up with water, close the thing, and stick it in your toilet tank. It just sinks to the bottom. And it's like a brick, but it's rubber, and it's not going to mess up your toilet. So they have the funniest ad. And it's good whether you can visually see it or not. So I'm going to play it. We're going to hear it. It's just a minute long.
Okay.
It's so good. Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. I think my speaker's up here.
I dropped a brick in the toilet yesterday. My girlfriend was watching.
I dropped a brick in the toilet.
I dropped a brick in
You
every
never
toilet
cease to
in our
amaze me.
house. I dropped a brick this big.
I love potty humor.
It was crazy.
It's
I dropped 2 bricks in the toilet, but then I took one out and put it in the toilet upstairs.
The brick I dropped was the same size as my dad's.
You want to see it?
I can feel it in here.
My brick was so big, the toilet filled up with less water.
I saved water by dropping a brick in the toilet.
If we all drop a brick in our toilets, we'll save California 67 million gallons of water a day.
In a state that's facing its worst drought in history,
So go into your bathroom.
must drop a brick and plop it into the top tank.
It feels great.
That's great.
And really, I don't
Dropped a
know.
brick in the toilet yesterday.
It's redoing.
I was
My
reading it.
girlfriend
Yeah.
was watching.
Oh,
I'm not sure that I can. I don't
There's
know
nothing.
where to go
No.
from there.
So-
Yeah, yeah.
Nope.
you don't have to buy a new fancy toilet. Keep your old stupid toilet
And
drop
drop
a brick. They sell them online. They're like $15 each, and there's a discount if you get multiple ones. It started as like a crowd fun thing in
Yeah.
California a
And
couple
now
years
it's-
ago, in like 2014 or 2015, and now they just sell them everywhere
Soon
because
it'll
they were
be
so popular.
A global phenomenon.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
So if you don't want to buy a whole new toilet,
Make sure you hit.
And you wanna save
Laurie's-
water.
Laurie's link.
Yeah.
Drop a brick
Yeah.
/ Laurie.
I think.
no.
Are you gonna buy those now for closing gifts?
Oh, that would be so funny.
Sure
Oh
would.
my gosh! Now I want to buy like 100
Have your
of
name
them.
printed on it.
Just
So that,
Yeah.
drop a brick with Laurie. No, but maybe.
There you go. No, but maybe. Yeah. Well, I got nothing after
I
that.
got
Mike.
nothing.
Okay.
Nope.
Well. So this has been TBD, your Colorado Springs real estate podcast, and in no way, shape, or form are we financially benefiting
Nope.
from Drop a Brick.
No.
But okay.
But it does make me feel good to spread the word.
There you go. No, yeah. Right? You got anything else? Okay. Okay. Everybody have a good weekend.